All right. So, we've got two kind of special episodes for you. Sam and I both agreed it would be cool if we each got a moment to talk about our favorite teams. So, this episode and then a later episode are going to be completely dedicated to IU and the Detroit Pistons. So, I'm going to interview Sam about IU a little bit for the next 20-ish minutes. I'm going to ask him some questions. He's going to answer them. So we're going to go ahead and start that. To recap a little bit, so far, this is episode 6. Sam, the Fro, and me, the Carrot, have talked about, we talked about the NFL draft, talked about the NBA draft lottery, talked about March Madness. The very first episode was an interview style, pilot. This episode we're going to talk a little bit about IU, talk a little bit about the Big Ten too, I'm sure. So, Sam, would you say this season for IU is a success?
In terms of, what we can do with the program and where we're headed, I'd say if you're taking the single season, I'd say no. But I think if you're looking at it from, a more like broadened lens of, years to come, this is obviously a step in the right direction. Coach Mike Woodson has done, unbelievable feats with this program. I mean, just let alone getting Trayce Jackson-Davis to come back for his junior year, let alone senior year, doing it again, getting him to come back for 2 years, I think is, an undeniable feat. When you're talking about this IU team, it needs Trayce Jackson-Davis, because, you had, Xavier Johnson, hurt for the better half of a year, and when you have him out, who is there really to step up? Jalen Hood-Schifino, while being a highly touted prospect in the NBA draft, I don't think he could have got IU over the hump without Trayce not being there and him being already in the NBA.
How successful do you think Trayce Jackson-Davis will be in the NBA one day?
So, I'm probably one of the few IU fans that actually thinks this, but a traditional big isn't insanely transferable into the NBA. They obviously work in college with just the more traditional play style, especially in the Big Ten. But I think, a traditional big doesn't work in the NBA for various reasons, even though Trayce is insanely athletic, he's insanely good. It's just, I don't think he necessarily has the game outside 10 feet of the basket to suffice him being in the NBA. A lot of what he does is, within, the post, really, offense and defense. I mean, he's a phenomenal post player. But when you're talking about a guy who's only 6'9" and his entire game revolves around the post, I think that's destined for failure. He definitely has the athleticism to be able to compete. He ranked first in various categories among centers in the draft combine, which was the three-quarter court sprint, I think it was, the max vert, agility, and then I couldn't tell you the fourth category, but nonetheless, all ranking first among all the centers is a phenomenal feat. But at the same time, I just think his game only relying in the post wouldn't be enough to suffice. He would need to broaden his game and make it more full court rather than just within 8 feet of the basket.
Sure. All right. So what would you say was IU's biggest failure this season?
I really just think it all relied on March, really, and just how far we went. Not having Xavier Johnson there, you need a guy with a dog mentality like what he's got, and, losing him early in the year and while we were at Kansas, it just was absolutely detrimental to our season, and I think a lot of people didn't realize that until we played Miami. With Jalen Hood-Schifino not performing, as well as he needed to until the last 3 minutes of the game. you know, it sucks to see, but I really think Xavier Johnson would have been a big piece in us being able to perform well in March and for us to get past the second round, which is where we needed to be. And in all reality, this was a Final Four roster without a big piece.
So obviously, IU has not seen much success since 2002, winning their last championship. What would you say they need to make happen to really get a roster good in it? Because it's different from the NBA, where the NBA has free agents and trading. But with college basketball, you have to scout high school players and then convince them to come play for your college. So what would you say is the biggest thing IU needs to change to get players, winning players to come play for their college?
Right. Well, with roster management, especially now in college, it's a lot more diversified in the sense of it's a lot more like the NBA. And what I mean by that is with the addition of the transfer portal, you're essentially getting free agents. With guys opening up their recruitment again, coming in for visits, stuff like that. Being able to see what's their best fit rather than just in the before the transfer portal, just guessing what's a good fit and just going straight there and not being able to do not being really able to open your recruitment, go on visits, stuff like that. With the addition of a transfer portal, it really helps roster management. You really know what you're getting. Guys really know where to go, where's a good fit, stuff like that. So hopefully we can get Caleb Love out of the transfer portal, because in all reality, what we do need is a shooter. We need a guy who's could catch a kick-out pass and can consistently knock down shots. We had that in Trey Galloway. We had that in Miller Kopp, but they just wouldn't take enough threes, I think, and they weren't really, mentally there to be that shooter, that guy. I think it could be there in Gabe Cupps. I think if you get Trey Galloway the ball more in that situation, he could knock down more threes. Obviously, Miller Kopp doesn't have any eligibility left. He won't be on the team next year. I think Mackenzie Mbako, getting him was a phenomenal recruit. Phenomenal job by Mike Woodson. And obviously, Mackenzie can do anything, but I don't think you necessarily want to make him the shooter when his game is so much more diverse than that. I think he could be a primary ball handler, just scoring piece. I don't necessarily think he's a kick out three kind of guy.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So, since Bobby Knight, what was Bobby Knight's last year's IU's head coach? Do you know?
He was fired in 2000 before the 2001 season. Oh yeah.
Why was he fired? I thought he's like one of the best coaches literally ever.
Well, yeah, he was, but I mean, it just depends on who you ask. It depends. So, a lot of people, and according, especially just the president that fired him, thinks that he's an evil tyrant. Really, when you succeed so much, there's a lot that you can get away with.
Sure.
Right. Like look at John Moran. Right.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, whatever he does with playing with these guns and stuff, nonetheless, at the end of the day, he's still going to be an NBA player. Sure. He could screw up so royally and still be in the NBA. And that's the thing. That's why Bob Knight was really a coach for so long in IU, was because he could do like literally almost anything he wanted to do, just because he was so successful. And there was a new president, and during that time, and that didn't really let that happen. So he gave him a 3-strike rule. I can't remember what the first two was, but the thing that really cut it off was basically this one kid came up to him. It wasn't even in a game or anything. It was just on campus. The kid came up to him and said, "Hey, Knight," and he took that very offensively and kind of grabbed the kid and talked to him. And
why did he take offense to that?
Coach Knight or Mr. Knight is how you should properly address an adult. That's how he saw it. There's a lot of things that Bobby Knight was getting away with. He ended up choking a player and denying the accusations, even though there's video proof of it. That player was Neil Reed. He ended up transferring out of there.
I probably would
Yeah.
too. I don't blame the kid.
Ended up passing away not too long ago.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, it was. I don't think that choke necessarily restricted the airflow. I think that's just him grabbing him and like saying, "Hey, pay attention." Not that that's
Right.
acceptable at
Yeah,
all, but
sure.
it wasn't necessarily an attempt to hurt him.
Uh-huh.
It was just it wasn't like that, but.
Okay, so, going back to my original question. So, since 2002, what would you say about the coaches who have succeeded Bobby Knight? Obviously, because when you think of great coaches, you think of, Greg Popovich and Coach K, and then there's Bobby Knight, and, so, what would you say, what would you say to, the coaches who have succeeded him? What would you say about them and, the things they've done to help IU become successful? Because, in college basketball, the coach you have is a lot, because it's different in the NBA. When it's college, it's these players are still kids, that you're coaching kids from anywhere between 17 to 20, 23. So, these are still really impressionable people.
Right. So I'll go in order here. So immediately succeeding him was his own assistant coach, Mike Davis. He was really in a position to sink. After that, Knight and his other assistant coaches would kind of derail him, call him a traitor for even taking the job, because Bobby Knight, after being fired, hated the school, hated everything to do with it, just because he hated the president and hated his people. I forget what you call them, but those top officials at IU, he absolutely hated them. And so Mike Davis was kind of in a position to fail. The whole fan base hated him. Obviously, bitter taste in their mouths after Knight being fired.
Yeah.
And he did a phenomenal job. He made a national championship run in 2002, just losing to Maryland. That team wasn't necessarily, it was a Bob Knight team, but at the same time it was definitely not his best team. Definitely not a team that could have cut it in the Bob Knight era, but nonetheless it was some of his kids that he recruited, not obviously the way that he wanted to go, but his pieces were still there.
Yeah.
And for him to make a run to the national championship is just absolutely so commendable. And after him, we had Kelvin Sampson, who is now the head coach at Houston. I'm probably one of the 2 IU fans who thinks that we shouldn't have fired him. And basically, everyone calls him a cheater, right? Everyone says, basically, he got in trouble, he got IU in trouble for recruiting violations. And, with most IU fans, the knowledge of that situation stops right there. Was recruiting violations. He got IU in trouble. IU is a clean program, right? We don't do that kind of stuff here. So for us to be in that situation, obviously a lot of people hated Kelvin Sampson, wanted him out of there. And if you look at the recruiting violation, I really think that we should have kept him, because his recruiting violation was he overstayed the allotted time that you have to talk to your recruits. So he essentially worked too long, right? He essentially worked too hard.
Nice. Did his job too long. Cool.
Yeah. I really, that's a phenomenal coach. That's definitely a top 10 coach in all of college basketball right now. Obviously, you see the success that Houston's had, being a number 1 seed this year. He's created a juggernaut in Houston, and I really think he should have stayed with IU. After Kelvin Sampson, we had Tom Crean. Now, I think Tom Crean really, really, really underperformed. I think he was a good he was a good succession coach to Kelvin Sampson. I think he got IU where they somewhat needed to be, especially with this 2012 team where we were consensus number 1 team in the nation, having 2 top 4 picks and Victor Oladipo and Cody Zeller that year.
Cody Zeller.
Yeah, who
Charlotte Hornets legend.
Yeah, I hate talking to an NBA fan about Cody Zeller because
They don't know that he was probably an absolute dog in college.
No, he definitely was, and just was one of the worst busts of all time. But to see him in college play, I mean, that he was just an absolute legend, and he was definitely worthy of that number 4 pick, if not higher. I mean, he was picked there for a reason.
Sure. Do you know, was he drafted by the Bobcats?
I think so. I think he was drafted by Charlotte. Yeah. But nonetheless, you had a highly, touted roster, and, you don't come away with a national championship. That is highly questionable. So, Tom Crean really underperformed. And then you have our next head coach. It was Archie Miller. Dear God, his 4 years here was a train wreck. He did not excel well. I mean, he had, obviously he was a great recruiter, but I think that was about the only thing that he did, landing Romeo Langford, which was, I think, the 5th best player in the nation.
Wow, Romeo Langford, boy, Romeo Langford.
Yeah, also did nothing in the NBA.
Yeah, I was about to say, Brooklyn Nets legend.
Yeah. I think he got Romeo to the 14th pick by Boston in the 2019 NBA draft. That was really all he did for IU, was just kind of get Romeo Langford to the NBA, and then with a highly touted prospect like Romeo, he's really just a 1-year rental. That he was only there for 1 year, one and done. I hate kids like that. I'm not gonna lie. I don't like it when kids do that. I think if a school really wants you, you got to stay there for 4 years. You got to do your due diligence when they're getting you this opportunity. Not that other schools wouldn't, but at the end of the day, like, they really want you, and you should be there for as long as you can.
Sure.
So to see him be one of the worst coaches in IU history, it was just incredibly saddening to the program. And then after him, he gets fired, and we get Mike Woodson. And what Mike Woodson does, his very first task as the head coach at IU, is Trace Jackson Davis was recruited by Archie Miller, right? So Archie gets fired. Trace has no intention at all at staying in Bloomington. Wants to go to the NBA draft, is dead set on it. He even said himself, dead set on going to the NBA. Mike Woodson comes in, talks to his dad, talks to him for hours. They sat down and talked for hours. He finally gets Trace to change his mind, come back to IU for his junior year, ends up making it to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2016, where they won their playing game against Wyoming, and then end up having to play the juggernaut that was St. Mary's last year. Just a phenomenal team that shot the ball incredibly well. The IU St. Mary's game, I don't think anybody was beating St. Mary's that night with how well they were shooting, just knocking down literally every single look that they got. And then ended up getting Trace to come back for his senior year. So really just borrowed time with Trace, getting him to come back for 2 years, and transforming him into the All-American that he could have been as a freshman and as a sophomore, and just really getting him to there. Phenomenal job by Mike Woodson.
So what would you say the future of IU is looking like right now as of May 19th, 2023?
So just a season, or put a 5-year scope on it?
Just 5-year scope.
Okay, so obviously with college, there's not really a good way to tell, in terms of long-term future, what's it's going to hold, because, those kids are only there for 4, maybe 5, maybe in the rare chance 6 years.
6 years playing college basketball.
Yeah, so they're really only there for 4 years. So, nonetheless, I think this up and coming year, we got Xavier Johnson, a really good facilitator. He's going to be at the 1 spot, taking the ball down the floor. Just an unbelievable passer, just an absolute dog. Love to see him do his thing. That 2 spot is probably going to be our biggest question. It's hard to tell on who's going to be starting there. I think as of right now, it looks like it's going to be Trey Galloway. who's returning for his senior year, and he's all right. Not the sexiest piece that you can get, but nonetheless, he does all the little things right, and I think that's what you need in a guard, especially when it comes to March. Is you just do the little things right. Then obviously in our three spot we have Mackenzie Mbako, 5-star recruit, Duke decommit. Whittles his options down to Kansas and IU, and ultimately picks IU. Big get for Woodson. I think it's an unbelievable recruitment job. The number 4 spot, we have Malik Renew, who played his freshman year with Chase Jackson Davis, so he kind of understands, what it takes to be an All-American from the power forward position, and really excited to see how well he does. To say the least about his freshman year was that he truly had a freshman season. What I mean by that is he showed glimpses where he could, possibly be, 3/4 of what Trace was, but he obviously made some crucial mistakes. He'd have this great, magnificent dunk cutting to the basket, and then the next offensive possession he'll just turn the ball over on some stupid horseshit pass. But for his progress, I'm really excited to see it. I'm really excited to see, if he even stays all 4 years here, and nonetheless, what's in store for this year. And then rounding out our starting 5 is Khalil Ware out of Oregon. He was a top 10 recruit, McDonald's All-American last year. Goes to Oregon, doesn't really do much, gets benched for, just really being soft. But I think with Mike Woodson and his coaching staff, really what they can do with these kids, the sky's the limit for them as far as improvement goes, and I'm really excited to see what they can do this upcoming season and years to come.
All right, cool. That's all the time we have. It was a nice talk about IU. Very educational.
No cap.